there's more and more different body types, I think, coming into triathlon. It's not always like, one size fits all, like, and you're just going to perform the best if you're at this weight and this height. And I think that's what makes it really interesting, is you've got all these different, strengths and weaknesses across, and there isn't many people who are world class on all three.
So, welcome to the Chop House, Dan. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.
Whereabouts are you at the moment?
I'm in Santa Fe in New Mexico, so it's in Arizona. In New Mexico, in the States. And yeah, it's 7,000 feet or so. So yeah, pretty high up.
Yeah, I'll have to type that into Google because I don't know what feet is in meters.
Yeah, it's about 2,150, I think, something like that.
Do you feel it in the lungs then, or are you quite adapted now?
Uh, yeah, I mean, not day to day, unless you're walking up a flight of stairs and then you feel like you just came off the back of off season or something. But yeah, no, it's in training. I think it never seems to go away. Like the feeling of like it always just feels harder, but you just as you say, you just adapt to it. But yeah, it's a great little location because it's 7,000 feet, but you can like just over on my left where I just showed you before, like there's a ski hill and it goes up to like 10,000 feet on the road. So I rode up to 9,100 the other day, and I can tell you that is, it gives you an appreciation for the guys on the Tour de France when they're going above 3,000 meters. It's like, it was flipping hard, but also you can go to a bigger city called Albuquerque, which is like 5,500 feet, so a fair bit lower, and do some faster stuff there. So there's a good stuff here. It's great.
So your FTP, you can see the contrast between that, can't you? At the top, it's like someone amateur, but then at the bottom, you're world class again.
Yeah. It's in numbers are it's I would say that's probably one of the hardest things is the numbers on the bike. Like when I was doing efforts the other day, I literally did all my hill reps between like 8,000 to 9,000 feet, did like an hour and 8 minutes of hills there, and just like there were different intensities, but like seeing the numbers is hard. Like I was trying to hit similar zones to what I would at sea level, but just it's the top end that goes. The top end is where it becomes a real challenge. But yeah, it's just a world of pain, really.
And like you said, with the off season, it feels like you're at off season, so you want to continue pushing the power. You know you can push, but you're not able to, and you do have to bring it down and be very confident in that headspace, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I have got one more race this year, so I'm not quite on the brink of off season, but it's it becomes a bit more on feel, I would say, especially in the initial like week or two. And then I mean, ideally by the third week that I'm here, which is the last week I'll be here, I want to try and hit like, ideally be hitting similar paces, times, powers, whatever it is, to sea level. But that's the theory. But we'll see.
That's the mitochondrial adaptations, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's the 3-week cycle and then the fourth week rest before competition. But
I must say, though, I think, like I definitely think it's easier coming here when you're fitter. Because I came in January to the same place and it was so hard. Whereas this time it's like the end of the season, I'm very, very fit, like I'm robust and strong, and like it's been significantly easier, I think, like adapting. Whereas earlier in the year, like you say, I came off the back of off season and it was just like, whoa, like it was a real kick in the ass.
Yeah, you're like, can I still do it this year?
Yeah.
The biggest thing that I think outlines triathletes compared to any other sport is the amount of training that you do.
Mm-hmm.
So if you will, just talk us through what a typical endurance day might look like.
Yeah. I mean, I guess every day is probably relatively endurance based, because even today is an easy day and I've done 3.5 hours this morning and I've still got a 5 mile run later, and that's a easier day. So it's always decent volume. But I think I think probably my biggest days can be either Tuesday or Saturday generally. It depends in terms of like, heavy endurance blocks tend to be more in the winter. But, if we took, for example, like at the minute, a typical day on a Tuesday might be, anywhere between 2 to 3 hours on the bike with efforts. Again, it's going to vary, like, in the time period, but uh, yeah, I think tomorrow I have kind of tempo efforts and threshold efforts. So, you're getting a pretty half decent volume ride in, along with, a good volume of efforts, like usually well in advance of an hour of efforts, kind of up towards 2 hours, depending on the intensity, of course. And then usually I actually run off the bike, usually. So I'll run off for like half an hour. So
Directly afterwards.
yeah, directly, but just easy generally in like most weeks. And yeah, so again, that session can be anywhere between 2.5 to 3.5 hours with the run. Um, and then often in the afternoon, like I'll swim between 90 minutes to 2 hours. And again, that's like it's a threshold swim. So, it's I don't know how much you know about swimming, but it's similar intensity threshold on the bike, but it's just, again, it's just big volume at that threshold intensity, kind of 3K, 4K of decent swimming within maybe a 5 to 6 kilometer swim. Um,
Do you split that up across the session? Is it 3K straight up, or because when I was doing the swimming, it's a different game because you're doing a straight endurance swim. But would you split that up into like 200s, do a lot of technique some days as well, and all of that, and still
yeah,
be at that base
100%. I
swim?
mean, yeah. So like a Tuesday there, for example, it's gonna, like, a threshold set would be, compromise of three. It's going to be usually around 3 to 4K worth of like hundreds, 200s. It's certainly at
Sure.
altitude, I'm not going to go much more, but at sea level, it can be 300s and 400s as well. So it's kind
Yeah.
of compromised of that. And then obviously around that, like, main bulk of the session, it's, a bit of, like you say, you're warming up, your technique, and obviously a cool down. I mean, like, a very generic session is like, something like 30 times 100 meters off a minute
Yeah.
30. So like
Yeah.
that's like a classic for, you know yeah, swimmers, triathletes, the lot. um
Yeah.
but yeah, of course, like other days, like, this morning I swam 6K, but very, very like aerobic technique focus. Like, I mean, we use like, pull buoy and paddles, for example, so it's like more strength
Sure.
oriented as well.
Yeah.
And taking a little bit of strain off the legs, because obviously you're doing a lot on the legs. So yeah, it
Yeah.
does vary, but
So you use the
we have
pull buoy quite a bit then.
yeah, 100%, yeah.
In a week, what average weekly hours are you pulling?
Uh, to be honest, mine are not crazy, but it's like with my new coach. I mean, I've been working with him since like January last year. But like it is, the volume's noticeably, like, it's going up probably every 6 months or so, just subtly. But obviously, we've only been 20. It's gonna go. It's gonna keep going up and up and up.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say, like,
Yeah.
at the minute, like, I'm at altitude and I'm preparing for Worlds. It's kind of, the volume isn't crazy because we're focusing a lot on intensity. So it's like, maybe 22, ish hours, 23, 24 hours a week. So it is good, but it's not like crazy.
Yeah. Sure.
But definitely in the winter, it'll go higher. But I would imagine next winter I'll be anywhere between kind of 23 to 26. Again, it'll depend. But it's just rising steadily, and I think that's really important at 20 as well. Like, there's enough there to really allow me to develop, but also it gives me
Grow
enough
that
width.
engine.
Yeah, because like I still don't quite understand. Like, you've got 20-year-olds who, like, that's good volume already, but it also means like I'm at 20, I'm not doing 30 hours a week already, because it's like, well, if you're doing 30 hours a week already, like where do you then go? Like, so I've got a little bit of wiggle room in there for, but generally, like you say, it's decent volume. But some of the guys who are coached by same coach as me, like Sam Long, who's huge in the Ironman world. I mean, he's training 30, 35 hours a week in, week out. And I mean, some of the rides he's doing are just, obviously a lot of that compromises of riding, but yeah, it's crazy high volume. But he's doing Ironman and, stuff like that. So it is subtly
Yeah.
different. But yeah, I don't know. Like, to me, it doesn't sound that much. It might sound more to you like 22, 23, 24 hours. But for a
But
triathlete,
you're
it's
just at the start of that journey to building that engine. You're Like you
Yeah,
say,
yeah,
you're only 20 and you stop growing about that 21 to 23, depending on genetics and all that.
yeah. I wish it was about 5 years ago for me.
Yeah, you just want to leave that wiggle room to, as you say, be able to grow and keep tapping on that performance. And I
Yeah.
think that's a testament to the performances that he achieved this year that we'll get onto later. But
Mm.
um, with all that training and also the gaps between the training, how the nutrition must be super important.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I mean, that's why I was late to coming on because I was eating. Um, yeah, it's you know, I think when you train in a lot, like there starts to be a bit of a threshold. I notice, especially once I start going over probably like 22 hours and you're verging on 25 and more, like you just kind of eating all day. I mean, your smallest days are like 3 hours. Like even recovery days are like 3 hours. So it's yeah, like I think it then becomes really really important. I mean, something that I've always been good at is like getting in fuel quickly without sessions. Like straight after sessions. Like I've had a lot of good people around me always, but I think like this year I've really had quite a focus on like fueling sessions. Like I think I've not been as good at like fueling in sessions is what I maybe have around sessions. So yeah, that's been definitely a bit more of a focus is like looking at like carbohydrate intake within training because obviously do you know what it is like you can get away with if I do that Tuesday morning bike for example I can get away with even at altitude like taking barely anything. I could probably have like a banana for like 2-3 hours and do efforts and I'd still get away with it with a bit of juice. But the problem is, come the threshold swim in the afternoon, I'm probably going to be screwed. And then the next day is a hard day as well, and you're just gone. And so it is a balance. But I mean, generally, it's just you're just constantly fueling. Yeah, and obviously, the more hours you do, the more the more you eat. So it's just yeah, it does feel like you're just eating all day and training all day. But yeah,
Yeah, because rowing is because at university I've got a housemate that's a rower, and you see that often being classed as the highest calorific sport, and they eat so many calories, but equally they're using that to put on weight, whereas
yeah.
all the triathletes are just super lean. So I guess you're just trying to keep minimum body weight healthy.
Yeah, it's an interesting, this is something I've thought about in depth actually, and like I chat about with a lot of people is weight. Like, you know, you're right that like, there's this generic image of a triathlete, which is, say an Alistair Brownlee where, reasonably tall figure, lean, and you've always seen very lean people. And I think generally you're going to be relatively lean because, there's a lot of training involved. At the same time, I'm sure you know the name Christian Blumenfeld from this year, who's just about won everything under the sun from the Olympics to the Ironman to he's just won half Ironman world champs last week. I mean, he goes against probably every principle that there is in terms of weight. I mean, he's the same height as me, and he's a good 15 to 16 kilograms heavier, and it does make you it makes you kind of change your perspective a bit, like that there's more and more different body types I think coming into triathlon. And I know if Christian is a little bit of a freak of nature, but also he's showing that like you don't have to be like one body type. I mean, you see it in cycling, there's a lot of different body types in cycling. It's not always like one size fits all, like, and you're just going to perform the best if you're at this weight and this height. And yeah, I mean, I'm definitely on the small side for men, but I'm reasonably like I'm also reasonably kind of like I don't know, like stocky or like I'm reasonably big for my size. So yeah, I don't know, like I've started kind of going more on the approach of like something that Christian told me when I was pretty young, but like you eat to perform and and ultimately like whatever your body kind of turns out being like that's what it is. Like it is hard to fundamentally change like genetics and to change your body to be something that's like you know totally different. I don't think that's necessarily a good thing either. So yeah, it's an interesting topic.
To be a professional athlete, you have to be as healthily lean as possible, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you know, it's it is sometimes a contentious subject, but equally with the nutritional gains that people are making nowadays, it's becoming healthier to achieve those.
Mm,
And, as you said, like from my perspective of not only triathlon, but running, the additional weight that you might carry would affect that run if you can't hack it. So it might benefit on the swim and the bike, but typically what I've heard from my experiences in sport and around the younger age of triathlon was
mm.
that you had to be a runner
Yeah,
to
yeah.
be
I
a
mean, to
triathlete.
be honest, you are right in terms of like, I mean, if you look at running, like if you look at just pure runners, like you don't see many big runners because like, there's it's easier to carry less weight effectively. Um,
It proves that running economy.
Yeah, 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 exactly. And one thing with triathlon is like swimming creates, I've swum for basically my whole life. Like I've been in the pool since I was 9 months old, but I've swam trained for a long time. And like, you develop a very big upper body, which is
Yeah.
it's not very useful for running, especially not running 5 and 10K and then, potentially half
or
marathon and marathon.
cycling too.
Yeah, yeah, or cycling. Yeah. So it's just like, yeah, but like I say, I think you develop, you just your body develops over time with with how you train. And if you take someone like Alex Yee, for example, I mean he was like pure runner. I mean he's still unbelievably lean, like he looks like a runner, but he has put on like muscle mass. He looks slightly different to what he used to do, but like he still carries that fundamentally quite a runner's sort of physique. But over time he's developed more of an upper body and bigger quads or whatever with the ride. And yeah, I think it's just important not to like to stress it too much. But yeah, certainly different backgrounds create, obviously that's where you're getting the different body types as well. So
But with those different backgrounds, you can pull different tactical points into the sports that you do.
yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. Like if you look at it, like Alex, for example, he's still run dominant. So he's not generally at the front in the swim. He's a very good cyclist because his power to weight is fantastic. He's great at handling as well. But then he has this like superpower on the run, whereas you got some people who are like have superpower on the swim and the bike, for example, but not as good on the run. And I think that's what makes it really interesting is you've got all these different strengths and weaknesses
Mm.
across, and there isn't many people who are world class on all three who can compete at all three. And I mean that's where you had the Brownlees and obviously like Vincent Louis won the World Series yesterday in Bermuda. He's class on all three, and that's what I've always kind of aspired to be, is like is to be as classy as possible on all three, because ultimately it gives you the best armory to deal with whatever kind of comes your way in racing, rather than having like a weakness. No, it's an interesting sport and it's always changing.
And I think that's the beauty of watching triathlon from the outside. From my perspective, is you can balance it up. You can have two good ones be at the front of the race for the run, and then have that gap rush in the run, and it creates a tense finish, and
Mhm.
vice versa. So I think that creates the beauty of watching that event and why it's so special at the you know for the mainstream viewers, let's say at the Olympics and Comic Games,
Yeah, yeah,
which we'll get onto because you competed in your first Commonwealth Games this summer, didn't you?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I did. It was really special. Honestly, there was probably one of the most special moments of like my career, and obviously I got called up so late to replace Johnny Brownlee. So obviously some big shoes to fill, but also like yeah, triathlon was the first event of the games, home games. It was just thousands and thousands of people out and lining the streets deep, like 3, 4 deep, the whole way around the course. I mean, like, yeah, and obviously because you're a home athlete, the amount of support you got was just like mind blowing. I mean, I've never experienced anything like the call on, like the call on to the pontoon, and you kind of walk from you jog from the line up to the pontoon. I mean, you got however many thousands of people, like including my family in the stands, like calling your names and like clapping for you and stuff. And it's obviously significantly louder than when it's any other country. Like when it was the three of us, Sam, me, and Alex. it was so loud, and it was just a real buzz. Like it was really really awesome to be a part of it, and yeah, I'm pleased that I had the opportunity.
Do you still have goosebumps reading that story out? Because I know I would.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've had a few people say like, what was that probably was one of the best parts. Like the race was the whole experience. That kind of week leading into it, like being with the team, and it was very unique where we stayed and stuff like this. But the whole experience. I mean, like there was it was it was pretty hard to beat the kind of feeling of walking on. And like now I look back at it, and I think I took it in as much as I could, because I mean stuff like that, and that whole day. There's going to be very few times in my career where I'm like, I mean, yes, it's Birmingham, but it's still a home games. Even though I'm up further north, and um,
Mm.
yeah, I think there might not be another major games in the United Kingdom while I'm still racing professionally. So to have that opportunity in my first year as a senior was just like, yeah, it was pretty special, and definitely something to that I'll remember for sure.
Because you achieved 12th place at that race.
Yeah, yeah.
Would you class that as the watershed day where it'd be like, right, this is the start of my career?
Uh, it was definitely a big moment. I gotta say, like on the day it was weird. Like I didn't quite have the race I wanted, and also me and Sam were there to try and pilot or domestique Alex a
Yeah.
little bit. Yeah, sadly I didn't quite have the legs on the day, which was a bit odd. But I had a pretty good race, and I think the position was awesome. But like I think being a part of a major games was something like really special. It's a very different feeling, um, to that of other events, and it carries its own kind of prestige. And yeah, I think that in itself was special, because I was kind of like, yeah, I really want to like come back, do better, but also be like a part of more major games, because it was
Yeah.
just so special. And I was just thinking like, God, I wonder what the Olympics must feel like and stuff like that. I mean, let alone a home Olympics in London, that must have been just mind blowing. But yeah, I think to be honest, because I've done triathlon so long, it's this year's just been like, I think it's been more like a realization of like like realizing actually I
It's
am,
possible.
yeah, like yeah, it's possible to be one of the best guys in the world. I've kind of shown to myself that I'm like, I feel like in a way I wasn't sure like coming out of juniors how I would feel racing at this level. Like you just don't know how it's going to be until you race these guys. And I think in a way you kind of get that like, a little bit of like imposter syndrome type thing where you're like, before I knew it, I was lining up against some of the best guys in the world. Earlier in Singapore, I raced with, number one, two, and three in the world or whatever, and like finished fourth. Like, it was moments like that where it was like, actually, yeah, like this is pretty sick. I think I've got to like, I can actually do this. And yeah, I think that's been what it's more like that this year, where it's like that realization that like, yeah, actually I can give this a really good go, and be exceptionally good. And but I've always done the sport for I've done it for so long. I mean, I've done it longer than what I've known you, back when I was time trialing and stuff. And um yeah, so nothing's really changed in the fact that I'm doing triathlon still, similar to your just you're riding still. It's just that realization that you're closer to some of these guys than what you think, and you realize everyone's kind of human, and not everyone is unbeatable.
They're not
It's
as high on that pedestal as you imagined it to be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, but also a lot of them meeting the guys is like really cool, because you always like I'm sure you've met some people that you've always wanted to meet, and it's quite unique because you've looked up for them for so long, and then suddenly the next thing you're racing them. I mean, the first time I've met Johnny Brownlee, I'm racing him. It's a bit odd. It wouldn't have been how I would have thought I would have met him. But
Yeah.
yeah, you realize these guys are they're no different to you and us, but they're also they're just exceptionally good at what they do. But a lot of them are really willing, as I'm sure you found as well. Like a lot of these top guys are quite willing to kind of share knowledge and stuff like that as well, and being immersed around them, especially at a Commonwealth Games, for example. Like the amount that you learn as a young athlete is just like, it's unbelievable, much more than what you would learn in any other racing.
Recently, you've been going and doing what's called, what is it, the Triathlon Super League?
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that
So it's Super
what's
League
the
Triathlon.
Super League Triathlon, right? And from where I'm sitting, it looks like a much more commercialized version of triathlon.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Yeah. I mean, Super League, I mean, obviously, a lot of your listeners are probably cyclists, but it's effectively, it's pretty much the most professional league that you could be in right now in triathlon. There's something similar in the long distance triathlon called the Professional Triathletes Organization, is PTO. Like, they're putting up huge, huge prize purse races. But yeah, Super League is like, to have got a shot at racing that, there's 20 guys and 20 women. This year there was 5 races, all over the globe. I mean, it was London, Munich, Malibu, Toulouse, and then we even went to Neom, which was the middle of freaking nowhere. Like, there's, flying into the Prince's private airport and all this, and like, there's no civilization for like hundreds of miles. It was pretty unique, but the whole thing is, like you say, it's commercialized, it's professional. There's around 2 million prize purse for the 5 races, but along with that, you're also everything's paid. Food, accommodation, travel, like any route that you want to go as well. Like, I've been coming back to the US in between races. Like, no matter where your journey is, like, everything's always funded. And the level of support is like unbelievable. And also, the unique thing is that everyone gets paid. So even if you happen to finish like last in every race or didn't finish every race or whatever, like, everyone will walk away with like at least, like a little bit of money, 5 grand or so. So it's still good. And I mean, like, you think like, like, you travel in the world, it's all paid for. You with the best guys in the world, the most, the highly, highly trained social media teams, the best commentators, like, the team managers are like previous world champions, stuff like that. Like, it is just so, so professional. And I did actually write a little bit on this, for a website, but it is like a school of professionalism. It's like, it's everything that you would want in a professional sport. And yeah,
Yeah.
it was
Oh,
awesome.
that's
It
so
was
awesome, man.
absolutely-
That's so cool to hear, man. Because
Yeah, yeah,
when I guess I started watching the triathlon from, well, I competed in it and then watched it from 2012. But there was also the ITU on ITV. That's a
yeah,
bit of a mouthful, but like in places like Auckland and stuff like that. But
yeah, yeah.
where is that possible to watch Super League now? Because I've seen it on your stories, but I've not seen where it is actually possible to view.
Yeah, yeah. So Super League it's been on Eurosport. I think it's been on Eurosport too. It's on
Okay.
YouTube, on their own YouTube, and it's usually on BBC Red Button as well. So it's on a few different platforms, but it's
Okay.
also it's streamed in like 24 different countries as well. So there's a lot of, yeah. It's definitely out there, like, more than, yeah. I mean, the ITU, yeah, that's definitely it's the older name for it now because they've changed all the brand and everything. But it's World Triathlon now, but it's the same thing. It's ITU racing. And yeah, that's, like, when you look at the contrast there, like, I mean, like you say, ITU racing, World Triathlon racing, like, it is on BBC Red Button, like, stuff like that, but the coverage is just nowhere near as good. Like, and I mean, like, when you see, and like, when you realize the kind of like, um, the ability that these athletes have, like the kind of performances they're putting in. Super League highlights that. It pushes it out there, like the amount of social media and everything else. Like, they're so good at what they do, and also, like you say, they're making it commercialized. The World Triathlon broadcast is absolutely crap. Like, and it's just not very good at all. And it is such a shame when, like, like, it is the kind of, that's where you're going to become a world champion. You chase after the World Series title. But yeah, Super League it's taken it to a different level. And what is good is that World Triathlon are having to respond. and basically, they're having to make the coverage better because Super League's just absolutely killing them. So yeah, there's some work to do on their side, but Super League are definitely changing the game. But also, it's a very new concept still, even though it's been around for 5 years. But again, it's growing traction each year, and I think this is the first year it's been on Eurosport, for example. So, I would imagine in future, it's going to become, bigger and bigger, and it will, because it's the best athletes, in the world. It would be no different in cycling than if you had a professional league with, 20 of the best guys and women in the world. You'd have a lot of people watching it. Um, so yeah, it just takes time, like anything. But yeah, sometimes you got to remember, like, triathlon's quite a young sport still, even though it's been around for a while. It's not been around that long, and so yeah, like initiatives like Super League are quite good because It's pushing it at a faster rate than what the generic like world triathlon racing is. But yeah, no, it's getting a little bit bigger, but certainly has a way to go to catch cycling.
I first saw it, I think, from my friend, and then seeing you do it this year, it's like, oh, actually, I might want to watch that. And now next year, when it comes around, because you finished with the season this year, I'll be like, next year, I'm gonna find the dates and I'm gonna watch them. You've done the Super League, you finished that series. How
Yeah.
did you get on over that?
Yeah, it was good. It was definitely it was a real learning curve. Like, I went into the first race in London, not especially fit, and I finished like 15, so I was just inside the points. But I was relatively happy, like just the fact that, like, the way things went, because I'd done the European champs, like the European Games, where obviously the cycling was on as well in Munich a few weeks before, and I got ill afterwards. And as you know, like it definitely affects you your build ups and that quite a lot and there wasn't much of a time period between. But no, like being there and family were there and everything, it was a nice way to start. And actually, only the second time I'd raced in the UK this year. So again, that was really, really nice, and it was a great way to start. And then we actually went straight to Munich. So that was like the next day. So back to Munich, where I'd had a horrendous Europeans. But yeah, Munich was again like awesome, and I think like I kind of learned the racing a bit. And there's different formats every race in Super League. They are a little bit complex to explain if you don't understand the sport properly. But it basically is just different ways of doing the order of the sport. But generally, there's three races within, like, 3 rounds within each race. Um, so yeah, like in Munich, I actually improved. I came eighth, and yeah, that was awesome. Like, totally different course, but again, like, beautiful location. It was awesome. And then again, we hopped straight on a plane to Malibu. And yeah, I mean, obviously, as you can imagine, everyone was getting pretty tired by then. Like, that was a long haul flight. You'd race 2 weeks in a row. But yeah, like, I don't know. I sometimes think, being young as well, I pick up so much every time I'm racing. I kind of was just learning at such a rate, and every race I was kind of getting better. So in Malibu, I kind of like, I was just always in the race and just progressively got better and better and better throughout each round. And then before I knew it, I'm like, I finished fourth, which, you know, I remember being on the phone with my parents afterwards, and I was like, "Holy shit!" I was like, "I just made $9,000, dollars or whatever." I was like, "That's, like 40 minutes." I was like, I remember that being my, like, first thing. It was just like, yeah, it was just like, it felt mad, like, you know, being around world class guys, making that much money, like doing what you love, like awesome location. It was really, really special. And yeah, I kind of got that race like bang on. That was perfect. And then yeah, we had 2 weeks off, and then the next race was in Toulouse. So yeah, in Toulouse was an interesting one for me. Like, I flew in long haul from America because I'd stayed in America. A lot of people went back to Europe. Um, and yeah, the time zone screwed me quite bad that time. I've never normally had a problem with the time zone, but yeah, when you're waking up at like midnight and you're hungry and stuff like that, it's just weird. It was a challenge. But yeah, no, again,
But as you said, a massive learning experience.
oh god, yeah, Toulouse was something else. I mean, Toulouse was probably nearly as good as, like, I wouldn't say as good, but it was probably getting on towards the same level of crowds as like Commonwealth Games. Like it was mind blowing how many people turned up for the race in Toulouse because it's like city centre. They're mad, mad sport friendly in Toulouse.
Yeah,
And obviously a lovely day as well. And the
passionate.
courses are very, very short. So, it's very easy to line them. And God, the amount of people in Toulouse was crazy. And yeah, I mean, I think I had a great first race and like I actually broke off the front in the first race. And yeah, I think I probably went a bit hard. Were insane. And I probably got a bit excited, but like it was good fun. And like I say, I think I mentioned before that there's teams involved in this league. There's 5 different teams. So, um, individually, I think I suffered a little bit for that, that effort. I faded kind of to 12th in the end, but still picked up points. But what was really valuable is I picked up like, bike, fastest bike laps and, whatever it is, swim points and stuff like this. So that all adds to the team. So it was unique because even though I wasn't like super satisfied on my own, I had an awesome first race and got plenty of airtime and all that, and it was great. But I also got like a lot of points for the team. So ultimately, the team, like the better the team does, you also get a huge amount of money at the end from where the team finishes.
Yeah,
So it's as much as I didn't have the great race in my eyes on my on my individual side, I actually helped the team, and that ultimately helps you as well. So I think Toulouse was really really good as well. And again, like learning to deal with time zone changes and all that has been something to deal with this year. And then yeah, I actually had 3 weeks in Tucson, so I went back to the States afterwards. And yeah, got mega fit, mega healthy, and yeah, went off to the middle of the desert in Neom, which was just, I mean, if any viewers haven't got a clue what it is, I'd be surprised if anyone knows where it is. But yeah, it's in Saudi Arabia, mate. It is literally the middle of nowhere. Like if you go on Google Maps, there is nothing there. It was mad. But yeah, that was kind of the grand finale. And yeah, like I had an absolutely terrible race, which made it's one of those things where I kind of just had to accept that time. I think it was just a bad day. Like I looked at everything beforehand. Everything was like perfect before, which is quite rare. And I was the fittest I'd been in ages, super healthy, all of that. Dealt with the time zone difference well. Travel was super smooth. Yeah, I just didn't really have much, which was really really frustrating. But that experience there was like mad. Like it was so unique and like we got so well looked after, and I think like just being around that environment, like it was really it was hard to take that result, to be honest. But also the experience kind of just made me like it kind of numbed it a little bit the what I was feeling because it just it was really really special and it was just different. So yeah, and yeah, it was just like a little perk, like you say, like it's commercialized, it's professional. Like I lost a lot of money in that race, and like I've only started making money this year, but like yeah, I lost a lot that day, and I was like, it was just like an extra little like stab to how bad of a race I'd had as well. But again, it's all learning, and yeah, I finished up pretty decent in the series in the end. So yeah, it was just a hell of an experience for 5 races and to race the best guys in the world as well, like each time, and like learn and travel with them and go to different places. Like it was just absolutely awesome. And obviously, like I think Super League was the first time where I felt like like a genuine professional. I made a little bit earlier in the year, but like I made kind of enough to the where I feel like in a way, I almost feel like a professional athlete now, which it's weird to almost say that because you kind of work towards it for so long. But yeah, it's
yeah,
definitely been a bit of a game changer Super League this year, which is awesome. And yeah, something I definitely want to get involved in. Yeah, every year to come, basically.
in the years to come. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm so pleased to hear that, man.
yeah,
That is awesome to hear, and uh, I'm so pleased for you to have found that after following your journey from
Mm,
obviously the days that we competed in GHS and CTTs.
yeah.
But yeah, it's inspiring to watch.
Yeah, I mean, likewise, it's good to see. Yeah, it's good to see where you've gone with the cycling as well. Yeah, I'm not sure if I would have ever got to that. I don't know the levels that you're getting to, but
You can call yourself a professional. I'm not quite there yet, but anyway, with throughout that whole rendition of where you've raced and how much you've raced and the Super League and how awesome this year's been to see where you can go and how far you've got to go.
mhm.
You've traveled a lot through then. So my first question is, how is it traveling that much? And my second question is, what's the best thing about traveling in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think this year has just taken off with the amount of travel. Yeah, it's been a bit mind blowing how much I've done. I mean, I must say, I think top pro cyclists probably travel more than than a lot of triathletes, but short course triathletes definitely travel a lot. And this year I've seen that. I mean, that is one thing I was going to say is like maybe a lot of the cycling is in Europe. You know, there's plenty of triathlon in Europe, but there's also a hell of a lot elsewhere and a long way elsewhere, be it Asia or Australia, in America, wherever it is. So yeah, like that's been a real learning curve. I mean, I've gone from like European races, like your crappy little Ryanair flights for a few hours to you know wherever it is, Spain or Portugal, or to suddenly you're like every flight you're going on is like a long way, or you like multiple connections, and all of that, and that's definitely taken a bit to get used to. It's kind of weird. I used to look forward to going like flying stuff like that. Like now it's like it's not that I don't look forward to it. It's just like it's just became so so much a part of it. It's weird. It's almost like catching the bus now. It's a bit odd. Like I just get so used to just turning up at the airport and the same routine every time. And yeah, I mean like the only it honestly, I don't think it's taken. I didn't really have I didn't really have a choice but to get used to it. But it has been. It's been really good, but also like challenging. I think some of the long haul flights have kind of like beaten up my body more than what I thought, because it's very regular that we'll race and then you fly in the next day. And I mean, like the worst one I had this
Mm.
year was when I raced in Singapore. I raced really, really well, but got on an unbelievably long flight the next day. Whatever it was, 15 hours or 14 hours, and I'm just sat there like crammed up in like your little seat, and like it was just so uncomfortable, and you're all sore after the race. And by the time I got off, my body was just wrecked, for about a week afterwards. And you do get that, but then it's like, yeah, you got to kind of look and think, well, you are lucky to be able to you know, to be able to do that amount of travel, and to actually say that you can go away that much is really, really fortunate, because I know a lot of people who, they've barely been on an aeroplane in their life. So I understand how much of a fortunate position it is. But yeah, and in regards to travel, to be honest, like I think the best thing for me is like going new places, and then like usually with that meeting new people is kind of you usually end up meeting new people when you go away, and that's probably the best thing. Like you go to some places that maybe you don't think are going to be that nice, and you get a bit surprised, and but it's quite fun like traveling with people. And we're often like there's a bunch of us who are well into coffee and stuff like that, for example, and we make a little bit of a habit out of finding the best coffee shops and all of this, and like going and eating in nice places and riding in just some weird and wonderful places. And it's and obviously, like I say, the people you meet as well, like on that series I met some people who, of course, I knew everyone on the series, I knew of them, but a lot of them I hadn't met because they were a lot older than me. And getting
Yeah.
to know them, and like you're like, oh, I didn't think I'd get on with them that well, but actually you get on really well. And all of that, I think it's the the connections and the places you go with the travel are just like unreal. And again, like I say, to be to be so young and like be able to do what I'm
I've seen
doing.
that much of the world.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
like I'm sure I'm going to see plenty more, but it's absolutely awesome. And but like I say, I know how fortunate I am to get that opportunity. Like not everyone gets to do it, and I don't take it for granted at all. Like I know I say it's like catching the bus now, taking a flight, but I understand how fortunate I am. But it is so unique, and to be able to do it so young. And yeah, like I look at some of the places that I know I'll be going to next year, and I'm like, wow, like I mean, things as in cycling, they're pretty planned in advance, and
yeah,
you start thinking ahead, and like, wow, God, like I'm going to go there for this amount of time, and I'll be visiting that place, and yeah, it's awesome, and I'm sure you've seen it as well. Is when you've traveled around a bit, like
yeah.
meeting people and riding new roads and stuff like that, and like cool coffee shops and whatever it is. Like it's such a, it's not a bad life, not a bad life.
For me, it's every culture you come across, it's a chance to learn something new quickly because
Mm.
you can see what someone else is doing and then implement it into what your routine is. So if you see someone else's morning routine in this country and then their evening and lunchtime routine or something like this, then for me that's just so special to see that much culture. And I think that culture pot is what really develops us as people at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
You've also started a YouTube video 3 months ago. I saw you put your first video up there.
Yeah.
Where did that come around? Why did that come around?
Um. Yeah. I mean, I guess I started so earlier this year. I started working with like a manager.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's
Social
like
media manager or just an
no,
agent?
like a manager who looks after like contracts and stuff like that.
Yeah, sure.
Um,
Yeah, yeah,
and so yeah, like that changed a lot of my thinking. Like this year, like like he worked with me really really well, and like he's fantastic. He doesn't look after many people, but the ones that he does, he's exceptionally good at looking after them, and he definitely helped me to like to see like in triathlon at the minute, if you want to be like really professional and make a good living, it's you need the performance, but like there's this professional side of the sport, with the contracts. There's often now like a lot of social media commitments. There's a lot of like whether it's like days with sponsors or speaking engagements or like there's a lot involved with it, and I think like I spent a little bit of time I spent a lot of time with some of my coaches guys. Like one of them specifically, Sam Long. Like I saw him earlier in the year, like just how professional he was. Like, and I know it's he's had to find a bit of a balance now, but having fantastic results, and yet like he's got like YouTube, he's on podcasts, he's has like great, he's got like a photographer and a videographer with him all the time, and awesome social media, and he's like doing engagements with sponsors and all this, and like the amount of value that he was able to add to the people who supported him, and then also extract so much about himself. It like made me really, really like curious and like wanting to kind of explore it more. And like I say, like working with my manager, obviously he helped me to like set up a lot of things and push a lot of things. And yeah, like I say, it's the YouTube was an interesting one. It was a little bit to do because like professionally it's good. You can give a little bit of exposure towards like brands and stuff like that, but
yeah.
the big thing for the YouTube for me is like I'd kind of said for a while I wanted to do something like that, and the reason being is like when I look at where I'm racing now, for example, like it's really really interesting, I think, to like see that journey to get through. And I remember like looking up to the brownies when I was young. Like there was nothing out there for me as like a 12-year-old to like go on YouTube and watch and be like, like how did these guys train when they were like, I don't know, 16, 17, 18, and like what was the journey looking like to become,
Mm.
Olympic champions. And you've got books and you got little YouTube snippets here and there, but there's very little out there. And I think it was more for that, is it's like, I've definitely found it harder to be consistent with it because obviously I've been away a long time. But the guy I work with, Jamie, is fantastic, and I'll definitely aim to do a lot when I'm back from this trip. But it is that like it's trying to present a little bit of a journey, but also like to help like younger people where like realize like a different route because I've said it on to multiple people and multiple podcasts. Like the route that I'm taking is not very generic of a British triathlete, not going to uni. Um, so again,
Really?
I think part of it is like showing the journey, like what is it actually like to transition from a junior, and part of it is like showing people that there is a slightly different way that you can make it without having to follow this generic route. So it is a little bit of both. But whether people watch it or not is like, I actually really, really enjoy doing it. Like, it's good fun, and I really enjoy like Jamie coming over and like we have a bit of a laugh making the videos and stuff. And I basically just train. We don't have anything special, um, but like it's just good fun as well for me. So if people can watch it and take value from it, then great. But if not, like it's not a massive problem. But yeah,
And as people say, passive income.
yeah. Well, I have to get some more subscribers first, so you can give me a shout out. But
Yeah,
yeah,
but you know what I
eventually when
mean? Like,
I monetize, that would be cool. But yeah, again, like I say, it's the money. If it comes, then great. But there's a very likelihood I would end up just paying Jamie to do it all and do more
yeah,
with that money. But
with more time and you get more, I guess, young people, as you said, watching it, then in
mm,
like 5 years time it might big up as Super League becomes bigger and then you get bigger and all of that stuff. So it'll
yeah, exactly,
it'll
yeah,
be payback in the future, if that makes sense. So it
yeah,
might not
yeah.
be paid, but it'll be worth it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, money always comes and goes. To be honest, I'm not too fussed about. Yeah, I'm not too fussed about making it with YouTube. I say, it's just it's a fun project for me. To be honest.
I resonate that with all of that, all of what you said. And kind of to finish it off,
Mhm.
we've talked a little bit about 23, about being excited for the plans and the Super League and the locations that are coming up. But what have you got coming up for 23, and what are you most excited about it?
Uh, I mean, there's one focus for 23, and that's qualifying to the Olympics. Um, getting a third British men's spot is hugely important for me, but also the federation. It's something that we still haven't got, and yeah, like it's a big opportunity. So you know that I would say that's gonna basically revolve around most of my year next year is racing at the highest level, trying to accumulate points basically to getting high enough on the ranking and qualifying for the Olympics. Um, Obviously that will trickle over into 2024, before you get selected. So, that's going to be a season and a half worth of, accumulation of points and chasing that. But yeah, next year will be really critical to that because obviously you've got a whole season. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think along with that, like, yeah, it's going to be probably my first year away, my first year where I'm probably going to be away, like on the road probably most of the year as well. I mean, the trip that I'm on at the minute is like 3.5 months, so 3.5 months since I've gone home when I eventually
Mm.
go home. But I think next year, I'm gonna really, really dedicate myself towards that goal of. To be honest, it's more a process because it takes multiple races. It's not just one race. So more dedicating myself towards that process of like qualification. Like I really, really want to give it a good go. And with that, like I say, I'm going to be away probably most of the year on the road, traveling, training, which is going to be, yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I'm definitely looking forward to that. And like I say, I mean, we still got stuff like Super League at the end of the year. You've still got championships within the year. So yeah, it's going to be a big year, but I think that main thing is like that process of qualification. If I was going to say one event that I'm particularly I would say excited for, it's definitely not the biggest event of the year, but it's big for me is like the World Series is going to end up going to Sunderland in the northeast.
Oh,
So not
oh.
not the nicest of locations, but obviously it's moved away from
For you,
Leeds.
it will be the.
Yeah, it's been in Leeds for what, 4 years or so now, but they couldn't hold it this year. So it's going to be in Sunderland for 1 year. What I'm kind of most excited about is to have a World Series in my own region, and that is, I mean, it's all the best guys in the world who I normally will get the opportunity to race next year and a little bit this year that I have, and they're going to come to my region, albeit not the nicest part, but they're going to come to the northeast, and I think as soon as I heard about that, I actually heard about it in January this year, well before a lot of people knew, but that's going to just be really, really special to have a home World Series again, similar to the Commonwealth Games. I think it could be likely the only World Series I ever have in my region. So, like I say, there's test event next year, the Olympic test event. There's the grand final in Pontevedra, but I would say that's definitely one of the bigger target races of the year where I'm like really looking forward to it, just because when you're going to get that opportunity to have such a big race in your own region, it doesn't come around very often. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. But yeah, it's just similar to yourself. It's a huge process game at the minute. Um, it's hard to say how much learning there is, but also like physiological development, continuously, and yeah, like it's just like a constant progression at the minute, and I think like process wise, it's really really important just to um to keep backing yourself with that, and yeah, like it's just there's a lot going on next year, but they're probably the two main things really.
Yeah. Oh, that's so special, man. To have that home region, as you say, that'll be special as, and
Yeah,
I
well,
wish you the best for the process.
yeah, hopefully my bike doesn't get stolen from little chavs there, but we'll see.
Oh, you're meant to be selling your region. Come on, Dan.
Yeah, I know. Well, if it was my choice, I'd have it in Northumberland rather than Sunderland. But um, yeah, it'll be good.
Yeah, I'm sure it will, mate. That's awesome to hear, and I love that the whole conversation here because it resonates. I resonated so much with that, and it was
Mm,
incredible to hear that story and that journey. Since obviously I've not had a lot of contact with you since those GHS days, but
mm.
it's so cool to hear, man. And
Yeah,
as I said earlier, inspiring.
yeah. No, no, no. It's nice to catch up again. To be honest, like you say, it's been a while since we raced, and I don't know. I was gonna say I didn't know if people listening knew kind of our background, but yeah, it's good to kind of catch up because I don't know how many times years ago it was since we raced. I was probably 14, I think, when we raced, or 13
Yeah,
or something. It's definitely a while
13,
ago.
14. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
but
So a
for
while.
for all the listeners, he beat me by 10 or 15 seconds every year. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Whether
with all
or
your
not it beats
sponsors
now,
and
I
stuff
need
like
a
that.
time trial bike back again. I just sold my time trial bike the other week, so yeah, my brother's
No,
now riding the bike that beat you all those years. So
I yeah, he's gonna get a lot of success on that then.
yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, mate, I love that. Thank you very much for coming on, and
No worries.
yeah, wish you all the best.